The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was filled with beings from 47 different species. Some had scales that shone like jewels. Others had 6 arms, or floated in special tanks filled with liquid. A few were so large they needed entire platforms to hold their weight. They had gathered here for 300 years to discuss trade, war, peace, and the future of known space. In the middle of all these strange and powerful creatures sat the human delegation. They looked small, weak, almost boring compared to the others. Ambassador Park Gina stood at the human station with her hands folded in front of her. She was a woman of 50 years with gray streaks in her black hair and laugh lines around her eyes. She smiled often. She spoke softly. When other species argued and threatened each other, she would wait patiently and then offer solutions that helped everyone. The other delegates did not understand humans at all. "Look at them," whispered the Velthari representative to his aide. The Velthari were tall beings covered in hard blue shells with claws that could cut through metal. No natural weapons, no armor. Thin skin that tears at the smallest touch. How did they even survive on their home planet? His aide checked the data files. "It says here they evolved on a death world, Ambassador. High gravity, extreme temperature changes, dangerous predators everywhere." The Velthari representative made a sound of disbelief. "Impossible. Look at them. They are clearly prey animals who got lucky with technology. Nothing more." This was what most species believed about humanity. In the 3 standard cycles since humans had joined the Council, they had done nothing to change this view. They traded fairly. They sent doctors to help sick worlds without asking for payment. When the Morthok hive suffered a terrible famine, it was human cargo ships that brought food while other species argued about payment and politics. Humans were nice. Humans were helpful. Humans were weak, far from the grand halls of the Council. On a small planet called Horizon 4, 3 million humans lived peaceful lives. The planet was beautiful, with wide green plains and mountains that touched pink clouds. Families had come here to farm, to study the local plants and animals, to raise children away from the busy core worlds. Captain Kong Tai-ho commanded the only military vessel in the system. His ship, the Vigilant Star, was small compared to the warships of other species. It had enough weapons to fight off pirates and enough speed to run from anything bigger. Tai-ho had chosen this quiet posting after 20 years of service on the front lines. He was tired of war. He wanted peace. More importantly, he wanted to be close to his daughter. Kong Yuri was 22 years old and studying xenobiology at the colony's university. She had her mother's sharp mind and her father's stubborn spirit. Every weekend, Tai-ho would take a shuttle down to the surface and have dinner with her. They would talk about her studies, about the strange alien creatures she was learning about everything and nothing. "You worry too much," Father Yuri told him one evening as they walked through the university gardens. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. "This is the safest place in the galaxy. Nothing ever happens here." Tai-ho smiled, but something in his chest felt tight. He had been a soldier too long to trust peace completely. "I know. I just want to keep it that way." At the university, Professor Yoon Do-an was teaching his evening class about alien history. He was an older man with kind eyes and a voice that made even the most boring subjects interesting. His students loved him. The key to understanding any species, he told his class, is to understand what they fear. The Velthari fear dishonor. The Morthok fear isolation. The Krath. He paused and looked at his students with a serious expression. The Krath fear nothing. That is what makes them dangerous. A student raised her hand. "Professor, what do humans fear?" Do-an thought about this for a long moment. "We fear many things. Failure, loneliness, death. But most of all, we fear losing the people we love. There is nothing more dangerous than a human who has lost someone they love." The students wrote this down, not understanding the weight of those words in another part of the colony. Scientist Bae Hanyul was finishing her work for the day. She studied the microbes in Horizon 4's soil, trying to understand how they might be used to grow better crops. It was quiet work, peaceful work. She liked it. As she walked home through the quiet streets, she looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, the great powers of the galaxy played their games of war and politics. Here on Horizon 4, life was simple. Children played in the parks. Farmers tended their fields. Students studied and dreamed of the future. None of them knew that their peaceful life was about to end on the other side of the galaxy. The Dominion of Krath was preparing for war. The Krath were conquerors. Their empire had grown for centuries by taking what they wanted and destroying anyone who tried to stop them. They had no art, no music, no poetry. They had only hunger and the strength to feed it. The Galactic Council had tried to stop them with sanctions and warnings. The Krath had laughed at these efforts. What could the Council do? Send strongly worded messages? The Krath respected only one thing: power, and they saw none in humanity, Commander. Vrokner studied the reports about human colonies. 3 million soft creatures on a barely defended world. Easy targets. Easy slaves. The humans would surrender without a fight, and if they did not, they would be crushed like insects. Set course for the Horizon system, he ordered his fleet. We will show the galaxy what happens to the weak. His ships moved through space like hungry sharks. 300 warships, each one bristling with weapons. Enough firepower to destroy entire planets? Back on Horizon 4? Yuri Kong fell asleep in her small apartment near the university, dreaming of the alien creatures she would study tomorrow. Her father orbited above, watching the stars and thinking about the dinner they would share next weekend. Professor Dowan graded papers in his office. Scientist Bei Haniel reviewed her research notes. 3 million humans lived their quiet lives, not knowing that death was coming for them. And in the great hall of the Galactic Council, Ambassador Park Gina smiled her gentle smile, spoke her soft words, and waited. She had been waiting for a long time. She knew, as all humans knew, deep in their bones, that peace never lasted forever. When the storm came, humanity would be ready. They always were. The alarms on the Vigilant Star screamed to life at 3 a.m. local time. Captain Kong Tai-ho was out of his bed and on the bridge in less than 2 minutes, his heart pounding in his chest. His crew moved around him with practiced speed. Their faces tight with fear, Report Tai-ho ordered. His voice calm, even as his hands shook slightly. Multiple contacts dropping out of faster-than-light travel, his sensor officer said. Sir, I'm counting. 300 ships. They're Krath. Dominion warships. The bridge went silent. 300 warships against 1 patrol vessel. It was not a battle. It was an execution waiting to happen. Tai-ho looked at the holographic display showing the enemy fleet. Each red dot represented a ship capable of burning cities to ash. His single green dot seemed very small and very alone. Open a channel to the colony, he said. Begin evacuation procedures. And send a message to Earth Command. Priority 1. Tell them, he paused, thinking of his daughter asleep in her apartment below. Tell them Horizon 4 needs help. On the planet below, the emergency sirens woke 3 million people from their beds. Families grabbed their children and ran to the shelters they had hoped they would never need. Farmers left their crops. Workers left their tools. The peaceful life of Horizon 4 ended in a single, terrible moment. Yuri Kong was running to the university shelter when her communicator buzzed. Her father's face appeared on the small screen, and she could see the bridge of his ship behind him. Warning lights flashed red. Father, what's happening? The Krath are here, Tai-ho said, his voice steady. Stay in the shelter. Help keep people calm. I love you, Yuri. Whatever happens, remember that. Father, please. The connection cut off. Yuri stood frozen in the middle of the street, surrounded by running people, her heart breaking into pieces. Across the galaxy, the Galactic Council was in chaos. The emergency session had been called within minutes of the Krath fleet's arrival at Horizon 4. Representatives shouted at each other. Some demanded immediate action. Others said it was not their problem. A few quietly celebrated. Happy to see the annoying humans finally put in their place, Ambassador Park Gina walked to her station with slow, measured steps. The room fell silent as she took her place. Everyone wanted to see how the humans would react. Would they cry? Would they beg for help? On the main display, Commander Vrokner's face appeared. He was a massive creature, with 4 arms and a head like a hammer. His teeth were yellow and sharp. When he smiled, he looked like death itself. "People of Horizon 4, he said, his voice booming through speakers across the colony and the council chamber. You have 1 hour to surrender. Give us your people, your resources, your complete obedience, and some of you may be allowed to live. Resist, and we will turn your world to glass and ash. This is your only warning." Council held its breath, waiting for humanity to give up like they always knew the weak SP. Essie's wood. Ambassador Park Gina pressed the button to speak. Her face filled the screens of every ship in the Krath fleet and every station in the council chamber. She looked exactly the same as always, calm, pleasant, professional. Then she stopped smiling. The change was small but terrifying. Something in her eyes shifted. Something ancient and cold looked out from behind her gentle face. Her voice, when she spoke, was quiet as a knife sliding from its sheath. "On behalf of the United Human Nations, I must inform you that your demands are rejected. The people of Horizon 4 are our citizens, our children, our family. You have 1 hour to leave our space. This is your only warning." Commander Vrokner laughed, a harsh sound like bones breaking. "What will you do, little human? Smile at us. Offer us tea? Your species is weak. You have no claws, no fangs, no strength. You are prey pretending to be people." Gina did not react to the insult. She simply pressed another button on her console. "Earth Command, this is Ambassador Park. Authorization code Del277 Omega. The Dominion of Krath has declared war on humanity. Activate Protocol Predator." 17 seconds passed. Then a response came from Earth, a single word broadcast on every human frequency across the galaxy. "Confirmed." In the council chamber, the human delegation changed. It was not dramatic. There was no shouting or crying. The humans simply ... shifted. Their postures straightened. Their eyes hardened. Their faces lost all softness, all kindness, all the gentle humanity that the galaxy had come to expect from them. The Velthari delegate felt his blood turn cold. He had seen that look before, in the eyes of predators about to strike. But those predators had been animals. These were people. Civilized beings. They were not supposed to look like that. "What is Protocol Predator?" asked the delegate from the Morthok hive, her voice trembling. Nobody answered. Nobody needed to. On the Vigilant Star, Captain Kong Tai-Ho received the Protocol Predator alert. For a long moment, he closed his eyes. He had hoped this day would never come. He had hoped his daughter would never have to see what humanity could really do, but hope was a luxury they could no longer afford. "All hands," he announced to his crew. "Protocol Predator is now active. We are no longer trying to survive. We are trying to buy time. Every minute we give the fleet is a minute closer to salvation. Do your duty. Make them pay for every inch they take." His crew responded not with fear but with something harder. They were done being prey. They were done being underestimated. They were done being nice. On the planet below, Professor Yoon Do-won gathered his students in the university's shelter. Some were crying. Some were praying. Most were simply scared beyond words. "Listen to me," Do-won said, his kind voice now carrying an edge of steel. "I taught you about what humans fear. Now, I will teach you what humans do when we are afraid. We do not run. We do not surrender. We fight. And we do not stop fighting until our enemies are destroyed or we are dead. That is what it means to be human." He looked at each young face, seeing the fear slowly replaced by something else. Something older than civilization? Something that had kept their ancestors alive through ice ages and famines and predators with teeth like knives. "The Krath think we are prey," he continued. "They are about to learn how wrong they are." In the council chamber, Ambassador Park Gina watched Commander Vrokner's confident smile begin to fade. Perhaps he had noticed the change in the human delegates. Perhaps he had received reports about activity across human space. Perhaps he simply felt, for the first time in his life, the cold touch of doubt. "Your hour is almost up," Gina said softly. "Leave now, and some of your people may survive. Stay, and you will learn why humans became the apex predators of a death world. Not because of claws, not because of fangs, but because we learned long ago that the most dangerous hunter is the one who never gives up, the one who will chase you across continents, the one who fears nothing, because they have already accepted death." She leaned forward, her eyes locked on Vrochner's image. "You have threatened our children, Commander. That was your last mistake." The Galactic Council had believed for 3 long years that they understood humanity. Peaceful traders, helpful doctors, gentle diplomats who solved problems with words instead of weapons. The humans kept a small military, just enough to patrol their borders and chase away pirates. Nothing to worry about. Nothing to fear. They had been fooled. Across human space, hidden stations powered up for the first time in decades. Asteroid bases that looked like dead rocks suddenly glowed with energy. Moons that had been classified as uninhabited revealed massive shipyards beneath their surfaces. And from these secret places came ships. Hundreds of ships, then thousands. The human fleet was not beautiful. Other species built their warships to look impressive, with smooth curves and elegant designs. Human ships looked like they had been built by someone who hated beauty and loved only destruction. They were all armor and weapons, painted in dark colors that made them hard to see against the black of space. They looked like what they were, tools for killing. Admiral Cho Sunmi stood on the bridge of the flagship. The Hammer of Earth. She was 63 years old, with short gray hair and a face like carved stone. She had spent 40 years preparing for a war she hoped would never come. Now that it was here, she felt nothing but cold determination. "All ships report ready," her second-in-command announced. 87 capital vessels, 200 support craft, and 40,000 Marines ready for ground deployment. "Long until we reach Horizon 4? Sunmi asked. 3 days at maximum speed." Sunmi nodded slowly. 3 days. A lot could happen in 3 days. A lot of people could die. "Tell Captain Kong to hold the line," she ordered. "Help is coming." Back at Horizon 4, Captain Kong Tai-ho was doing exactly that. His single patrol vessel danced through space like a ghost, never staying in one place long enough for the Krath to catch him. He could not hurt their massive warships, but he could slow them down. He could make them waste missiles chasing shadows. He could buy time. "Enemy fighters incoming," his weapons officer reported. 30 contacts. "Take us into the asteroid field," Tai-ho ordered. "Make them follow us into the rocks." The Vigilant Star dove into a dense field of spinning boulders. The Krath fighters followed, confident in their numbers. They did not understand that humans had been hunters long before they were prey. They did not know that Tai-ho had spent 20 years learning every trick of space combat. One by one, the Krath fighters crashed into asteroids they had not seen coming. Tai-ho's crew picked off the survivors with precise shots. When the dust settled, 30 enemy fighters had become 0. The Vigilant Star was still flying. On the planet below, the Krath had begun their invasion. Dropships fell from the sky like rain, carrying soldiers ready to crush any resistance. They expected to find scared civilians hiding in shelters. They expected easy victory. They found something else entirely, Professor. Yoon Do-won had organized the university students into fighting units. They moved through the campus like shadows, using their knowledge of the buildings to ambush enemy patrols. Chemistry students made explosives from laboratory supplies. Engineering students turned maintenance robots into weapons. Even the biology students helped, using their knowledge of toxins to create traps that made Krath soldiers scream and die. Remember, Do-won told his fighters before each mission, "We do not need to defeat them. We only need to make them bleed. Every soldier they lose here is one less soldier for the real battle." Scientist Bae Hanel had taken command of the civilian evacuation. The colony had underground tunnels, originally built for mining, and she used them to move families away from the fighting. When Krath patrols came too close, She led them into dead ends, where resistance fighters waited with weapons made from farming tools. "You're a scientist," one of the farmers said to her, surprised by her skill with a rifle. "Where did you learn to fight?" Hanul checked her weapon, her hands steady despite the distant sounds of explosions. "All humans learn to fight. We just hope we never have to use it." In the council chamber, the other species watched these events with growing horror. They had expected the humans to surrender. They had expected crying and begging and defeat. Instead, they saw old professors leading student armies. They saw scientists turning chemicals into weapons. They saw farmers standing against trained soldiers and refusing to die. "What are they?" the Velthari delegate whispered. His claws were shaking. "What are these creatures really?" Ambassador Park Gina heard him and answered without looking away from the battledis. "Plays. We are humans. For 3 million years, we survived on a planet that tried to kill us every single day. We were not the fastest or the strongest. We did not have armor or venom or claws, but we had something else." She turned to face him, and the Velthari felt true fear for the first time in his long life. "We had patience. We had teamwork. We had the will to chase our prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. We would track a single animal for days, for weeks, never giving up, never stopping, until it was too tired to run anymore. That is what we are, Ambassador. We are the species that does not quit." On Horizon 4, the Krath were learning this lesson the hard way. For every building they captured, they lost soldiers. For every civilian they caught, 3 more escaped. The humans fought from the shadows, attacked from unexpected angles, and vanished before the enemy could respond. Commander Vrokner was furious. This was supposed to be easy. These were supposed to be weak, helpless prey. Instead, his invasion was bleeding soldiers at an impossible rate. "Burn the cities," he ordered. "If they will not surrender, we will destroy everything." His ships began their bombardment. Fire fell from the sky. Buildings that had stood for generations crumbled to dust. Screams filled the air as colonists died by the thousands. Captain Kang Tai-ho watched from orbit, his heart breaking. Somewhere down there, his daughter was fighting for her life. He wanted to scream. He wanted to cry. Instead, he did what humans had always done in the face of overwhelming odds. He kept fighting. "All weapons target their bombardment ships," he ordered. "If we're going to die, we're going to make it hurt." The Vigilant Star charged at the enemy fleet alone. It was suicide. Everyone knew it was suicide. But sometimes being human meant doing the impossible simply because it needed to be done. And then, just as Tai-ho prepared for his final charge, his sensor officer shouted something that changed everything. "Sir?" Multiple contacts dropping out of faster-than-light travel. Sir, it's the fleet. Admiral Cho is here." Across the system, 87 human warships appeared like angels of death. They came in perfect formation, their weapons already charged, their crews hungry for revenge. Admiral Cho's Sunmi's voice echoed across every frequency. "Dominion of Krath, you have attacked our people. You have killed our children. There will be no negotiation. There will be no mercy. There will only be justice." The hunt had truly begun. The Battle of Horizon 4 began at dawn on the 4th day of the invasion. And it would be remembered for centuries as the moment the galaxy learned to fear humanity. Admiral Cho Sunmi did not waste time with speeches or threats. The moment her fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel, her ships opened fire. Human weapons technology had always been dismissed as inferior by other species. They were wrong. The Dominion warships that took the first hits simply ceased to exist, torn apart by weapons that hit harder than anything the Krath had ever seen. "All ships, execute hunting pattern Alpha," Sunmi ordered. "No escape. No survivors." The human fleet moved with terrifying coordination. They did not fight like other species, forming lines and exchanging shots until one side broke. They fought like wolves, circling their prey, cutting off escape routes, isolating ships from their formation, and destroying them one by one in the council chamber. Military experts from a dozen species watched the battle unfold. They had studied human history after the war began, looking for weaknesses, looking for understanding. What they found had given them nightmares. Persistence hunting, the Morthok delegate said, her voice hollow with horror. That is what they called it on their home world. Humans would chase an animal for hours, sometimes days. They would never stop, never rest, just keep following until their prey collapsed from exhaustion. And now they are doing the same thing with warships. It was true. The Krath ships tried to run, tried to regroup, tried to fight back. Nothing worked. The human fleet followed every maneuver, predicted every tactic, punished every mistake. Ships that tried to flee were hunted down and destroyed. Ships that tried to surrender were ignored. The humans were not fighting a battle. They were conducting an extermination. On the planet below, the ground war had changed completely. Human marines dropped from orbit in assault pods, hitting the surface like meteors. They wore armor that made them look like robots. And they carried weapons that could tear through Krath soldiers like paper. But it was not just the marines fighting. The colonists who had survived the bombardment joined the battle with weapons they had made themselves. Farmers with rifles stood beside soldiers with plasma cannons. Students who had never held a weapon fought next to veterans with decades of experience. Old and young, civilian and military. They all became one army united by a single purpose. Captain Kung Taiho led a joint force toward the university complex. His ship had been too damaged to continue the space battle, so he had crashed it into a Krath landing zone and led his surviving crew into ground combat. He was thinking of only one thing: his daughter, father. The voice cut through the chaos of battle like a light through darkness. Taiho turned and saw Yuri running toward him, alive, unharmed, carrying a rifle that looked too big for her hands. He dropped his weapon and pulled her into his arms. Holding her so tight, he thought his heart might burst. "I thought I lost you," he whispered. "You taught me to survive," she said against his shoulder. "I was not going to let you down." Professor Yoon Do-won emerged from the university ruins with what remained of his student resistance. They had lost many, but they had also killed many more. The old professor walked with a limp now, and there was blood on his clothes that was not his own. But his eyes still held that spark of determination that had kept his people fighting. "The enemy is retreating," he reported. "Their ground commander is dead. Killed by a chemistry student with a modified fire extinguisher." Despite everything, Taiho laughed. It was such a human thing, taking something meant for safety and turning it into a weapon. That was what they did. That was what they had always done. In orbit, the battle was turning into a massacre. The Krath had started with 300 warships. By the 5th day, they had less than 100. By the 7th day, less than 50. Admiral Cho did not let them rest, did not let them recover, did not let them think. Her fleet hunted them through every corner of the system. Commander Vrokner watched his empire's greatest fleet being destroyed piece by piece. He had never known fear before. He had crushed dozens of species, had watched worlds burn under his guns, had felt nothing but satisfaction at the screams of the weak. Now, for the first time, he understood what it was like to be prey. "This is impossible," he said, his voice breaking. "They are supposed to be weak. They have no claws, no armor, no—" "They have something worse," his aide said quietly. "They have patience and rage, and they do not stop." On the 9th day, the last Krath warship tried to flee the system. Admiral Cho tracked it for 3 hours, letting it think it might escape, letting hope build in the hearts of its crew. Then she destroyed it slowly, piece by piece, making sure every other species watching understood the message: do not threaten our children. The space around Horizon 4 was filled with wreckage. 300 warships had become a graveyard of twisted metal and frozen bodies. The greatest military force the Krath had ever assembled had been completely destroyed by a fleet, less than a third its size, in the council chamber. Ambassador Park Gina watched the final moments of the battle with an expression that gave nothing away. When the last enemy ship died, she simply nodded once and turned to face the assembled delegates. "You called us prey," she said softly. "You called us weak. You said we survived only through luck and submission. Now you know the truth. Humans are not prey. We are the predators who learned to wear the mask of peace. We are the hunters who chose to become farmers. We are the wolves who taught themselves to be sheep." She paused, letting her words sink into the terrified minds of 47 species. The Dominion of Krath made the mistake of showing us their fangs. Now they will learn what happens when we show ours. The Battle of Horizon 4 was over, but the war was just beginning. And somewhere in the depths of human space, ships were already gathering for the next phase. The Krath had started this fight. Humanity was going to finish it. The Dominion of Krath had ruled their sector of the galaxy for 800 years. They had conquered 32 species. They had built an empire on blood and fear, and the broken bodies of those too weak to resist. They believed themselves invincible, unstoppable, the ultimate predators in a universe of prey. It took humanity 17 days to prove them wrong. Admiral Cho Sunmi did not wait for the Krath to recover from the Battle of Horizon. For the moment the last enemy ship was destroyed, she gathered her fleet and began the hunt. More human ships joined her from across the galaxy, answering the call of Protocol Predator. By the time she reached Krath space, she commanded over 300 warships of her own. The Dominion's remaining forces tried to stop her at the border. They failed. They tried to ambush her in an asteroid field. They failed. They tried to make a final stand at their largest military base. They failed there too. Nothing they did worked. Nothing they tried mattered. The humans came like a tide, unstoppable and merciless. Back on Horizon 4, the survivors were beginning to rebuild. The colony had lost much. Entire cities had been reduced to ash. Thousands of people were dead, buried in mass graves that dotted the countryside like wounds in the earth. But the colonists were still there, still alive. Still determined to make their world a home again, Captain? Kong Tai-ho had been promoted to Commodore for his defense of the system, but he cared little for ranks or medals. He spent his days helping with the reconstruction, carrying building materials during the day and eating dinner with his daughter in the evenings. The war had changed them both, but it had not broken them. "You think we did the right thing?" Yuri asked one night, looking up at the stars that had once brought death to her world. "The Krath, I mean, we destroyed them completely." Tai-ho was quiet for a long moment. "They gave us no choice. When someone threatens your family, you do whatever it takes to protect them. That is what it means to be human. But does that make us any better than them?" "No," Tai-ho admitted. "It makes us survivors. Sometimes that is all we can be." Professor Yoon Dewan had become a hero to the colony. The students who had fought under his command called themselves Dewan's Wolves. They wore patches showing a wolf's head on their clothes. The university had given him a medal for bravery, but he kept it in a drawer and never looked at it. "War does not make heroes," he told his students when classes resumed. "War makes survivors and victims and corpses. Never forget the people we lost. Never celebrate what we had to become to survive." Scientist Bae Han-yul had been offered a position on Earth, but she chose to stay on Horizon 4. Someone needed to study how the soil had been affected by the bombardment. Someone needed to find ways to grow food in the scarred Earth. She had survived by helping others. She saw no reason to stop now. The galaxy watched these events with a mixture of fear and wonder. The humans had won. But more than that, they had utterly destroyed an empire that had terrified civilizations for centuries. And they had done it in less than 3 weeks. When the Krath homeworld finally fell, the Council called an emergency summit. Representatives from all 47 member species gathered to discuss what they called the human problem. Some wanted sanctions against humanity for being too violent. Others wanted to form alliances against them before it was too late. A few suggested assassination programs to eliminate human leadership. Ambassador Park Gina attended the summit alone. She walked into the massive chamber where 47 species waited to pass judgment on her people, and she smiled her gentle smile as if nothing had happened. "You're afraid of us now," she said, her soft voice somehow filling the entire room. "I understand. We showed you something terrible. We showed you what we become when we stop being kind." She looked at each delegation in turn, meeting their eyes without flinching. "But I want you to understand something important. What you saw was not our true nature. It was what we do when we have no other choice. Humans have been predators since before we discovered fire. We hunted creatures 10 times our size. We drove species to extinction just because we could. We waged wars against ourselves for millions of years, becoming better and better at killing with every generation. She paused, letting the weight of those words settle over the assembly. And then we chose to stop. Not because we became weak, not because we forgot how to be predators, but because we learned that building is better than destroying. We learned that kindness creates more than cruelty. We buried our fangs under smiles and our claws under open hands because we wanted to be better than what we were born to be. The chamber was completely silent. Not even the water-breathing delegates made ripples in their tanks. The Dominion of Krath attacked our children. They woke the predator we had put to sleep. They reminded us of what we used to be. And yes, we destroyed them completely. We erased them from the galaxy because that is what happens when you threaten the things we love. Ambassador Park took a step forward, and despite being the smallest being in the room, she seemed to tower over everyone. But that is not who we want to be. We want to be the species that sends medical ships to plague worlds. We want to be the ones who share food during famines and knowledge during disasters. We want to be gardeners, not hunters. That is our choice. That has always been our choice. She spread her hands, showing empty palms. We are not your enemies. We are your neighbors, your partners, your friends. But make no mistake, if anyone threatens our people again, if anyone hurts our children, if anyone forces us to wake the predator once more, we will do exactly what we did to the Krath, not because we enjoy it, not because we want to, but because that is what humans do when we have no other choice. The vote to sanction humanity failed. Every single species voted against it. Not because they loved humans, not because they trusted humans, but because they were terrified of what would happen if they made humanity angry. In the years that followed, things slowly returned to normal. Human diplomats smiled and negotiated. Human traders bought and sold fairly. Human doctors healed the sick, and human teachers spread knowledge across the galaxy. The gentle, peaceful humans that everyone had known before the war returned, as if the terrible predators had been nothing but a bad dream, but nobody ever forgot what they had seen. When human ships passed through their systems, other species made sure to be respectful. When human delegations arrived at conferences, they were given the best seats and the most attention. When human children visited alien worlds, they were treated with almost religious care, because everyone knew the truth now. The humans were kind. The humans were helpful. The humans smiled and laughed and built beautiful things. And beneath those smiles, behind those kind eyes, the predator waited. It waited, patient as death, ready to wake the moment anyone made the mistake of threatening the people it loved. Some species called humans the sleeping wolves. Others called them the gentle monsters. A few simply called them the most dangerous beings in the galaxy. They were probably right. On Horizon 4, now rebuilt bigger and stronger than before, a statue stood in the center of the main city. It showed a human figure with arms open wide and welcome, face turned up toward the stars with an expression of hope and peace. But if you looked closely, if you looked at just the right angle, you could see something else in that face. Something ancient, something hungry, something that remembered every hunt, every kill, every battle won through patience and fury and the simple refusal to ever give up. The statue had no name. It did not need one. Everyone in the galaxy knew exactly what it represented. Humanity, the predators who chose to be peaceful, and the warning to any who might forget that the choice could always be unmade.